It was an unusually warm spring morning in Silicon Valley, and Jamal Thomas adjusted the cuff of his sleek black jacket as he stepped into his Tesla Model X. The car, spotless and polished, gleamed beneath the shade of a high-tech garage built into one of the co-working spaces he had helped design years ago. But today, he wasn't headed to a boardroom. He had chosen to spend the week incognito, driving for the very rideshare company he had helped build from the ground up. It was something he did every now and then. Not for publicity. Not even for data collection. But to stay grounded. To remember what it meant to be in service, not just in charge. His name was hidden behind a pseudonym in the app. JT. No one would guess that this calm, clean-cut driver was a billionaire tech executive and one of the company's original co-founders. The ping came through just as he was finishing a quick coffee. A pickup at an upscale suburban home. The destination, San Francisco International Airport. Jamal accepted the ride and headed out. As he pulled into the driveway, the family of four was already waiting, parents in their late 40s, two teenage children. The father looked at the car, then at Jamal. His face shifted almost instantly. The mother pulled her daughter slightly closer as Jamal stepped out of the car with a professional smile. "Good morning," Jamal said warmly. "Thomas family?" The father hesitated, then stepped forward. "Actually, we, requested a different driver. There must be some mistake." Jamal blinked. "I'm the one who accepted your request. Is there a problem?" The man looked visibly uncomfortable. "No, it's just," he looked at Jamal, then back at his phone, "we prefer someone else. That's all." Before Jamal could respond, the teenage son muttered, "Dad, seriously?" under his breath. The daughter looked down at the pavement, embarrassed. Jamal didn't argue. He simply nodded. "No problem. I can cancel if you'd like." But just as the father was about to confirm the cancellation on the app, something happened. A subtle buzz, a notification. The father's phone lit up with a message from the app's trust and safety team. It read, "Reminder, discriminating against a driver based on race is a violation of our community standards. Repeated violations may result in account suspension." The man's face flushed. He turned the screen away, but his wife saw it. Her eyes widened slightly. "Wait," she said suddenly, tapping into the app. "Why does it say co-founder?" She tilted the phone toward her husband. There, next to the driver's name, was a new line that had appeared since the ride had been matched, "Rideshare co-founder, en route." Jamal stood calmly, arms at his sides, watching them process it. The daughter broke the silence. "He's the co-founder? Of Uber?" Jamal gave a small smile. "That's right." Nobody moved for a second. Then the son spoke again, this time louder. "Can we please just go? We're already late." The father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Doors are open," Jamal said smoothly, stepping aside and pressing the button to raise the sleek Tesla doors. The silence was heavy as the family slowly entered the vehicle, this time, not out of superiority, but something closer to shame. And as Jamal returned to the driver's seat, adjusting the mirror and tapping the GPS into place, he knew this ride was about to become much more than a trip to the airport. The air inside the Tesla was silent except for the soft hum of the electric engine and the faint jazz playing through the speakers, a deliberate choice Jamal made to keep the mood neutral. He didn't look back, didn't speak, didn't flinch. He simply drove, eyes steady on the road, as the luxury SUV glided onto the highway. In the backseat, the tension was thick. The father, Mark, sat stiffly behind Jamal, arms crossed tightly, still clinging to the humiliation of being called out by the app. His wife, Karen, stole glances toward the front seat, visibly uncomfortable, her cheeks still flushed. The kids sat in the third row, clearly aware of everything, and silently judging. 15 minutes passed before anyone said a word. It was the daughter, Emily, who finally broke the silence. "So, you helped start Uber?" she asked cautiously. Jamal glanced at the rearview mirror, offered a polite nod. "Yes. About 12 years ago now. Back when it was just an idea." "That's cool," she said, clearly unsure how to navigate the moment. "Like, you helped make the app?" He smiled gently. "I led the design of the routing algorithm. Helped raise the first round of funding. Later ran the expansion in South America. I've worn a few hats." Karen sat up straighter, suddenly trying to reshape the mood. "Oh wow, I had no idea. That's very impressive. You must be Very successful. I've done okay, Jamal replied calmly, his tone giving nothing away. Mark grunted faintly but said nothing. Why are you driving now, if you're, like, a billionaire? Emily asked, her voice honest. Jamal paused before answering. Because it reminds me what the company is really about. People, service, human connection. Tech gets cold and distant when you sit in boardrooms too long. The son, Brian, who hadn't spoken until now, finally leaned forward. So when you saw my dad wanted to cancel, I understood exactly what it was, Jamal interrupted, his voice still calm but firm. Not the first time. Won't be the last. The car grew quiet again. Karen looked out the window. Mark shifted in his seat, as if wanting to defend himself but unsure how. The kids exchanged glances. Then Jamal added, without venom, the irony is, you didn't want to ride with someone you didn't know, but I've probably shaped more of your everyday life than you realize. Mark finally muttered, I didn't mean anything by it. Just didn't expect. Someone like me. Jamal finished, his voice cool but not confrontational. Mark didn't respond. Karen bit her lip. As they crossed the bridge toward the airport, the sky opened into a wide view of the bay. The jazz still played. And the silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore, it was heavy with reflection. By the time they reached the terminal, nobody spoke. But what had started as a routine ride had become something far more uncomfortable. And necessary. The Tesla came to a smooth stop in front of the departures terminal at SFO. The curb buzzed with travelers, rolling luggage, taxi horns, airport announcements echoing faintly over loudspeakers. The atmosphere was in stark contrast to the silence inside the car. Jamal shifted into park, stepped out, and walked to the back to help unload the luggage. He didn't rush, didn't make a show of it, just moved with the same calm professionalism he had kept from the moment the ride began. Mark opened his door slowly and joined him, awkwardly reaching for a suitcase but fumbling with the handle. Jamal already had it on the curb before he could get a grip. Karen stepped out next, sunglasses on now, though the day was overcast. She gave a soft thank you, barely above a whisper. Emily and Brian climbed out behind her, looking at Jamal with a mix of respect and quiet embarrassment. Jamal stood straight, meeting each of their eyes. Have a safe flight. He turned to walk back to the driver's seat, but then Mark, to everyone's surprise, cleared his throat. Wait. Jamal paused, hand on the car door. Mark looked back at his family, then down at his shoes. I judged you before I even knew who you were. There was an uncomfortable silence. Before you even said a word, he added, voice tight. And that's not something I'm proud of. Jamal turned fully now. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just let the words hang there. Karen finally spoke. We appreciate the ride. And the lesson. Jamal's voice was even. This ride wasn't about teaching anyone a lesson. But I do hope you remember it. Emily stepped forward, her voice clear. I will. She held out her hand, nervous. Jamal shook it, firm but kind. Brian gave him a respectful nod. You are the realest person we've met all week. That one made Jamal's lips curl into the faintest smile. They turned and headed inside, luggage in tow. As the automatic doors closed behind them, Jamal stood there for a second, watching. Then, without fanfare, he climbed back into the car and pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic, another name in the system, another driver in the network, and yet the architect of it all. Behind him, a family stood changed, not by anger, not by punishment, but by truth. Inside the glass-walled terminal, the Thomas family moved through the check-in line slowly. The kids said little, each processing the encounter in their own way. Emily scrolled through her phone, but not aimlessly, she was searching. A moment later, she found what she was looking for, a Forbes article titled Meet the Silent Mind Behind the Movement, Jamal Thomas, Uber's hidden co-founder. She opened it and held it between her and Brian. There he was, same calm eyes, same sharp jawline, same soft smile. In a tailored suit, standing next to CEOs, policymakers, and engineers from around the world. Brian looked at their dad and muttered, "You literally told a tech mogul to cancel a ride because he was black." Mark didn't respond. He stared straight ahead, arms crossed again, but now it wasn't out of superiority. It was defense. From himself. Karen exhaled. We looked down on someone we didn't know. Again. I didn't mean, Mark began, but Karen cut him off, softly. I know. But that's the problem. You never mean to, but it still happens. They made it to security. As the line crawled forward, Emily kept reading. The article talked about Jamal's upbringing, first in Atlanta, then to MIT. His drive to build something that made everyday life better. His belief that tech could serve people, not just profit from them. The fact that he'd quietly stepped back from public credit while others claimed the spotlight. He still drives, she whispered, almost to herself. Like, to stay grounded. That's kind of beautiful. Or kind of sad, Brian added. That someone that accomplished still gets treated like that. Mark looked down. His phone buzzed, a system-generated receipt from the Uber app. He clicked it open. But there was more than just the fare. Thank you for riding with JT. You were matched with one of our founders, who occasionally drives to stay connected with our community. We appreciate your respect and kindness during this experience. Mark stared at the word, respect. He hadn't shown it. Not until it was too late. And now, no apology could take back the first impression. He swallowed hard. At the gate, while waiting to board, Karen reached into her bag and pulled out a travel journal she always carried. She clicked her pen and began to write. Date. City. Flight number. Then a note. Today we met someone extraordinary. And almost missed the chance to learn from him, because we judged too fast. Never again. She passed the journal to Mark. He hesitated. Then took it. And for the first time in a long time, he wrote something of his own. Meanwhile, back on the road, Jamal merged onto the 280 heading south, letting the cityscape shrink in the rear-view mirror. The soft jazz still played. But his thoughts were no longer on the family he had just dropped off. They never really were. He had long ago stopped being surprised by people's reactions. The silent stares when he opened the driver's door. The subtle way they clutched their bags a little tighter. The way their tone changed once they learned his name. Or his position. But today had cut differently. Not because of the insult, he'd weathered worse, but because of the daughter. The questions. The look in her eyes when he answered. Maybe something had changed. He pulled into a quiet street near Mission Bay, parked beneath a tree, and took a breath. Then he opened his Uber driver dashboard, not the public app, but the internal admin panel only accessible to top execs. A list of flagged rides blinked across his screen, complaints, cancellations, algorithm mismatches. One line caught his eye, driver match disputed. Rider requested alternate due to appearance. Jamal clicked into it. There was his face. The ride. The family. The timestamp. He hovered his cursor over the flag for review button. Then paused. Instead, he opened the rider rating and quietly left his own, 3 stars. Polite in the end. Room to grow. No anger. No reprimand. Just truth. He closed the laptop and looked out at the park nearby. Kids were playing. A father was pushing his son on a swing. Jamal smiled faintly. His phone buzzed, a message from another board member. Still doing the field work, huh? Respect. Dinner tonight? He typed back, always. Let's meet at the 9th and Bryant spot. I'll drive myself. Pocketing the phone, Jamal started the car again and eased back into traffic. Not for the money. Not for the ratings. But for the reminder. That even when people look at him and only see a driver, what they're really seeing is a mirror. The Thomas family sat in silence as the plane reached cruising altitude. The cabin lights dimmed, and the steady hum of engines filled the air, giving everyone a false sense of peace. But inside row 14, tension still lingered like static. Mark looked out the window, his reflection faint in the glass, a man who prided himself on being successful, in control, a good person. But for the first time in a long time, that reflection was cracking. He kept replaying the moment he asked Jamal to cancel the ride, the cold tone in his voice, the assumption he didn't even realize he had made until it was too late. Next to him, Karen was scribbling again in her journal. She was a quiet processor. She never lectured, never blamed, but the way her pen moved faster now showed she was feeling something deep. She paused once, stared ahead, then underlined a word, dignity. Brian leaned over to Emily. I still can't believe that guy was one of the founders. Like, the guy of Uber. Emily nodded. It makes you wonder how many people we walk by every day and never really see. Karen closed her journal and finally spoke. Do you know what struck me most? Everyone turned toward her. He was calm. All the way through. He didn't argue. Didn't humiliate us. He could have, and probably had every right to, but he didn't. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Because he's used to it. Karen looked at him. That should make it worse, not easier to ignore. Silence again. Emily took out her phone. I want to write something. Maybe post it. Mark's eyebrows rose. Like a public apology? Emily shrugged. Not exactly. Just. What happened? How we misjudged someone. And how he responded with more grace than we deserved. Brian looked uncertain. But wouldn't that just look like we're trying to save face? Emily turned to him. Not if it's honest. And if it makes even one other person stop before making the same mistake, maybe it's worth it. Karen nodded slowly. Write it, Em. I think it's the right thing. Mark didn't respond. He stared out the window again. But this time, instead of seeing his own reflection, he imagined Jamal, walking back to his car alone, driving off into a city full of people who didn't know who he was. And maybe didn't care. Mark finally whispered, I do now. 2 days later, a post began circulating on social media. It wasn't viral, not at first. It started small, a single account, a single caption. We made a mistake. And we were lucky enough to learn from it. Jamal, if you ever see this, thank you. Attached was a short thread by Emily Thomas, detailing the Uber ride with a soft-spoken, kind-eyed man we misjudged based solely on appearance. She didn't name him directly. She didn't need to. The details were enough for people to connect the dots. Within hours, thousands of shares. Then a tech journalist retweeted it. Then an executive from Lyft. Then a prominent civil rights advocate. One comment read, I know Jamal. He doesn't need the spotlight, but stories like this show why he matters. Another. Imagine being that composed when someone questions your place in something you built. And then a reply from a verified account, @JamIsOfficial. Appreciate the words. Respect costs nothing, but means everything. Jamal had seen it. A simple reply. No grand speeches. No call-outs. But for the Thomas family, it meant everything. Mark read the thread again and again that night. Not because he needed to relive his mistake, but because he wanted to remember the feeling, the slow unraveling of his assumptions, the hard reflection that followed, and the quiet grace of a man who could have shamed them, but chose not to. Karen framed Emily's handwritten first draft of the post. She hung it in their hallway beneath a quote that Jamal had included in one of his early interviews. I don't build tech for applause. I build it so the door opens wider for the next person. Brian brought up Jamal during a class debate on leadership. He didn't name him either. He just said, the best leaders don't walk in front of people. They walk beside them, quietly, until you finally notice who they are. And Emily? She started volunteering for a tech nonprofit that supported Black youth in STEM. On her first day, she wore a pin that simply read, Seen. Because sometimes the deepest change doesn't come from being called out, but from being seen, and being reminded of what we failed to see the first time.